Hi guys, guess what? This month, March 12th, is the Detransition Awareness Day. Also, have you heard the California lawmakers introduced 3 new bills 3 weeks ago on February 14th? They held a press conference outside the state capitol building in Sacramento. The purpose of these bills is to protect kids, women, and parental rights. Please pray for this bill to pass into law in California because, as we know, the state is in favor of gender affirming on minors, and they completely ignore parents' rights to decide what best for their children. I'm so glad that I attended this event. My daughter also came along with me and was so excited to be part of this historic moment. We got to meet about 10 great speakers, and we get to listen to their testimonies at this conference, including a detransitioner, Chloe Cole. That's what I'm going to focus on today, and to expose the evil agenda of gender-affirming care and the permanent damage it has caused to so many kids and the adolescents. I will give a summary of Chloe's testimony and will play the full video of her speech at the end of this video. I also apologize for the unstable video, as I was in tears listening to Chloe's testimony. If you want to watch the whole video and to listen to the stories and the testimonies from all the speakers at this event, click on the link in the description below. So, let's spill the tea. Chloe Cole is a Californian from San Joaquin Valley. From a very young age, she began to feel that something was wrong with her and that she was in the wrong body. She was tomboy and couldn't relate to any female role model and girls around her school. She went online to find some answer, and she discovered things that would influence her transition to the transgender community online. She was convinced that she had the brain of a young man and the body of a girl, and that she had the condition of gender dysphoria. She was convinced that the only treatment for her was to go through process of socially and medically transition. So at the age of 12, Chloe began to call herself as a young man by the name Leo. When she told her parents about her feelings, they didn't know how to respond. So they also did their research online, and Chloe was the one who directed them to either getting affirmation or immediate medical attention. They started to have her see a therapist, hoping that the therapist would help her to cope, and finally, Chloe would come back out of her psychological problems. But unfortunately, they were not given that option. Chloe's parents were told by the doctors that the only choice available for her was to undertake the medical procedures, and that it would be life or death situation for Chloe. No other alternatives. The therapist told her parents repeatedly about the high suicidal rate within the transgender community because of the lack of acceptance, bullying, harassment, and because they are not allowed to get medical intervention to change themselves on the outside. Chloe's parents fell into their lies and signed off on her treatments. Chloe underwent the process of medical gender transition from the age of 13 to 16. First, they started to put a healthy young Chloe on drugs to stop her puberty. Essentially, Chloe was undergoing artificial and temporary menopause with this drug. That's crazy. Soon after her first shot of puberty blocker, she was given a prescription of testosterone to masculinize her body. The drug was so powerful that it had caused changes to her personality, to her behavior, and her physical appearance, and changed her bone structure. By the time she was in her high school years, she started to look like a young man. She had the voice of a grown man, deeper than her male peers at her age. That was the picture of young Leo. Was Chloe really happy with her new life and new identity as a young man? Not so. She eventually sought surgery to remove her breast permanently when she was 15 years old. Her doctors didn't even try to make her aware of the regrets, the hurt, the pain, and that she would face a difficulty in recovery process psychologically and physically. The other treatment Chloe had to take was cross-sex hormones. All the treatments she had were irreversible. Besides her voice and bone structures being permanently changed, she has spinal and joint issues from taking the puberty blockers, and she had experienced a blood clot. The damage was already done. Even when she is able to have breast reconstructions, it will never be the same as a natural breast because most of the breast tissues had been removed. After all these procedures were done to her healthy body, she then was awakened when she realized she has lost healthy organs of her body. She was 16 when she had epiphany and started to look into her future as an adult. She started to think whether she would get married, whether she wanted to have children and a family of her own, and whether she would be able to have children at all after she had been in treatment that would potentially sterilize her because of how young she was on them, and whether she would be able to menstruate or ovulate if she goes off of it. Could she become pregnant, and would it risk her own health and cause birth defects on the baby? How is it going to affect her children's development? How is she going to explain to her children that they either have two fathers or that they have a mother who is living as a man? It hit her even harder when she learned about the benefit of breastfeeding on babies. She realized that she had lost something beautiful and she would never be able to have this amazing experience, and she would never be able to give that to her own future children if she may able to have any. Though she was still confused, Chloe started to detransition regardless, not having any guidance medically and psychologically from her doctors and any support from her transgender community. She managed to go through and believe she could eventually heal and happy. This is the new Chloe. Chloe is 20 years old now. She has been speaking publicly about her experiences of transitioning and detransitioning since she was 17 years old. She has been invited across the U.S. and abroad by various legislators and communities to share her testimonies. She has testified before Congress and remains a leading voice on gender ideology issues. She is a remarkable young woman, beautiful inside and out. It was such a privilege to be able to see her in person and have the opportunity to chat and take some picture with her. I thank her for her bravery to come out and tell her story and to let God use her to help save other families from making a huge mistake as her family did. The best part was that Chloe told me that she has met Christ in the process of the transitioning. Amazing story. Hopefully, Chloe's story and many other detransitioners will reach more and more parents out there who are not only supporting their little children to transition, but also celebrate it. Because of the woke agenda, many parents are so deceived and made believe that it is out of love that they would allow their little children to be transitioned. But also, there are some demented parents like this mom.
So here is my transgender baby. Her name is Bella. Bella was born a boy but now uses she, her pronoun. I am in the middle of trying to get a doctor's appointment in order to secure some medication to stop the male hormone taking over. Bella is 14 months old and is thriving in her new body. Now she's able to be who she was born to be. Trapped in the wrong body at such a young age has had a massive impact on young Bella's mental health. But with the right medication, we are going to get through it as a family. Just secured a grant as well to help Bella in her transition. So all costs have been covered and it's such a relief. She gets to be who she wants to be. This is all she's wanted for years now, and we couldn't be any more happier.
I really hope this is just a rage baiting, but this video is very disturbing, and I'm really concerned with her baby. May God will save this baby. Many parents has no clue that the kid's brain, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain involved in decision-making, impulse control, and understanding consequences, has not yet fully developed until at least they are in their mid-20s. So it is very normal for kids to live in their imagination. I like what the liberal Bill Maher said. If kids knew what they wanted to be at age 8, the world would be filled with cowboys and princesses. I wanted to be a pirate. Thank God nobody took me seriously and scheduled me for eye removal and peg leg surgery. Kids don't know yet what they want. Their identities, interests, and self-understanding will continue to change as they grow. They are influenced by what they see, hear, and experience from the people around them. Social media, the mainstream media outlets, their peers, the club within the public school, and the sex ed taught in school that promote LGBT ideology plays huge part in influencing young children negatively. I'm calling out to Christian parents to train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Proverbs 22, verse 6. Though you want so desperately to be your children's friend and to have a good relationship with them, you should not neglect your biblical call to be parents, to lead, not the other way around. It is critical to guide your children to understand their value and their identity doesn't come from their appearance, preference, and sexuality, but they are made in God's image, male and female. God didn't make mistake when he assigned our gender. Psalm 139, verse 13 to 16, clearly tells us that God created our inmost being. He knit us together in our mother's womb, and that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. His works are wonderful. If you think your child has gender dysphoria, the solution is not to alter their physical appearance, but to alter their mind. Gender dysphoria is the feeling that your emotional and psychological identity does not match the biological sex you were born with. It is a spiritual issue, and the factors that can cause gender dysphoria are low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, lack of identity, eating disorder, personality disorder, self-injury, autism spectrum disorder, sexual trauma, and most cases of gender dysphoria today are because of social pressure, more than actual struggles with gender identity. Many teens discover transgender ideas out of the blue. It's the influence they adopted, and when their feelings being validated by the world. The Apostle Paul writes in Romans 12, verse 2, do not conform to the pattern of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We as Christians are called to think differently not to follow the cultural trends. We need to set the boundaries and limit and lovingly guide our children and helping them to understand that their feelings can change, but God's word is an unchanging foundation. And make sure you have the right Christian counselors and psychologists for your children who will help them to cope with their psychological issue until they will eventually embrace their biological sex, not to encourage them to transition. That was the case a decade ago. Kids grew out of it. Only a good doctor or godly doctor would tell you that you cannot fix gender dysphoria conditions by changing your appearance, hormones, and by altering healthy sexual organs. This will not change a person's sex and will not change God's standards or his original design for your life. Since God assigned our biological sex, it has been coded into our DNA and every cell of our body. We are not our own gods to do as we wish with ourselves. We need to submit to God's will. Nothing will come out good to go against God's natural order. It will only cause destruction and harm to ourselves and also will affect the life of others. There is so much evidence that the gender transition on minors will not improve their mental health, but will cause regret, physical complication, and emotional distress, including infertility and lasting hormonal changes. Listen to the transitioners like Chloe Cole. If their stories will not open your eyes, I don't know what will. Again, for Christian parents, we are not to follow the world's path. Our role is vital in shaping our children's identity. We are called to be a voice of truth, leading our children toward God's design and purpose for their life. While the world will encourage our children to follow their heart or live their truth, we will encourage them to follow God's word and live in God's truth. Because the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Jeremiah 17, verse 9. This is the only truth we need to follow. Outside of this are only chaos and confusion. 1 Corinthians 14, verse 33. For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints. Let's help changing the law by electing the representative that will stand for the minors from the adults who would push life-altering and sterilizing treatments that will cause permanent harm. Until next time, enjoy the video, be watchful, and pray. God bless you.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
How are y'all doing today? I'm glad that I was able to make it here because just yesterday I was in Los Angeles. I'm kind of all over the place because of my advocacy work. I believe in the protection of children from certain harm by mutilation, by sterilization, under the guise of gender-affirming care. I believe in the protection of parents' rights and the rights of families. The rights of parents to tell their children no when they want to undertake harmful decisions, and the right to be fully informed about their child's transgender status, mental health issues, and about the true harms of what they call gender-affirming care. I myself am a detransitioned woman from the San Joaquin Valley, not too far from here. And I began to feel, a few years into puberty, that my body was wrong, that my regular pubertal distress was because something was different about me. Like I had some condition. Like I had to fix myself. From a very young age, I felt as though I was isolated, and I found it very difficult to fit in with the other children around me. I thought differently from them. I couldn't understand them, especially the other girls around me. My female role models and the girls around me at school, I just couldn't relate to them. I was on the more tomboyish side. I was very creative. I tend to think outside the box in many ways. And I was searching for some purpose, some sense of identity throughout much of my childhood and my adolescent years. And when I discovered other children online who were quite like me, who considered themselves to be as part of the transgender community, it felt like I'd finally found the answer for me. Like I could explain myself. I could finally pinpoint what about me that made me different. And what I thought it was that I had the brain of a young man in the body of a girl. And that I had this condition called gender dysphoria. I was transgender, and the only treatment for me was to go through the process of socially and medically transitioning. So I began at the age of 12 to call myself a young man by the name of Leo. And I told my mother and father about these feelings. They didn't really know exactly how to respond to any of this. I'm the youngest of 5 kids, but they never really had to deal with this with any of my older siblings. They could sense that I was going through a normal search for my identity and myself as a preteen. That perhaps as a tomboy I was going through a phase of sorts. But they couldn't quite pinpoint where exactly these feelings stemmed from for me. And thought that perhaps they weren't fully equipped to really deal with this, because maybe it was a deeper psychological problem. And that they were not wrong about. They decided that they would do some research online, all of which pointed them in the direction of either affirmation or immediate medical attention. So, they started having me see a therapist in hopes that the deeper problem would be discovered, that I would be questioned, that I would be helped and taught how to cope with these feelings, while still just allowing me to be a child, to explore myself within boundaries, and to just grow up, to go through puberty, to be given the chance to maybe come back out of this, and if not, perhaps decide to go into this as a fully grown adult. But we weren't given that option. My family wasn't given that option. Mom and Dad were told that this was the only choice available for us. They asked, why? Why does she want this so badly? Why does she want to undertake medical procedures when she's still only a child? Why is this a necessity for her? And they were told that it would be life or death for me by these doctors. The therapist started talking about the high rates of suicidal ideation within the transgender community. And it's a common tactic for these clinicians and counselors to then tell parents that it's because of a lack of acceptance in their transgender identity, because of bullying or harassment, because they're not allowed medical intervention. to change themselves on the outside. And they didn't just say this once. They repeated this lie to my mom and dad dozens of times. And when you're a mother or a father, the last thing that you want to be told by your child's clinicians, no less, is that your child is going to die without treatment. And because that they weren't given any other resources, any alternatives, they believed this. And they said yes, they signed off on my treatment because they were told that my life could be on the line. And so from 13 to 16 years old, I underwent the process of a medical gender transition, first starting with a drug called Lupron, which has been the subject of several lawsuits for other purposes. Before, it's been used to treat late-stage reproductive cancers, conditions like endometriosis. It's also been used to chemically castrate sex offenders of children. And yet I, as a perfectly healthy little girl, was put on this treatment that would stop my puberty, my path to adulthood in its tracks. I essentially underwent a artificial and temporary menopause for the duration that I was on these blockers. And very soon after my first shot of the blockers, I was given a prescription for testosterone to masculinize my body. And the drug was so powerful that it caused fundamental changes to my personality, to my behavior, to the way that I thought, and of course to my physical appearance. And by the time that I was in my high school years, I started this in middle school, I looked like a young man. I had the voice of a grown man, deeper than my actual male peers. I went through much of my high school career being treated as a young man because most of my friends didn't know better. I passed, so to speak. And even though I thought that I was happy in this new life and identity as a young man and leaving behind my old self as a little girl, the more that I actually integrated into the role of a man, the more that I realized I was dissociated from myself, that I still had problems, that I wasn't truly happy. But because I didn't know that it was even possible to regret this, or that this could be wrong for me or hurt me, I kept searching deeper. And eventually I sought surgery. Because I looked like a young man from the shoulders up, but I still had breasts. I still was using a binder every day to hide them. I wanted to be free of this uncomfortable medical device that squeezed my breasts down into my ribs. And I wanted to run away from sexual trauma that I wasn't given the opportunity to process. At 15 years old, before I could even legally operate a vehicle, I had my breasts permanently surgically removed. And this marked a major turning point in my transition and my attitude around it. Recovering from it was one of the most difficult parts of my life, both in terms of the physical and the psychological and emotional recovery. It hit me just how permanent and how destructive all of these procedures were when I finally lost organs off of my body. I was 16 years old when I had this epiphany that I was going to be an adult one day, and very soon. And how to have to start thinking about things beyond school, beyond where I may want to get a scholarship to, where I may want to go to college. I had to start thinking about my first relationship, whether I wanted to get married, whether I wanted to have children, and a family of my own as an adult. But I started to wonder, how am I going to have children if I've been on these treatments that potentially could have sterilized me because of how young I was on them? Am I going to be able to menstruate or ovulate if I go off of it? What are the risks of birth defects if I choose to get pregnant? What are my own health risks? And even my social transition, me being a woman living as a man, how is that going to affect my children's development? How am I going to explain that? How am I going to explain that my children either have two fathers or that they have a mother who is attempting to appear as a father? And then I learned about the psychology behind breastfeeding and nursing during infancy. And it hit me that I had lost something beautiful. I would never be able to have this amazing experience, and I never would be able to give that to my own future children, if I'm able to have any, because it was already ripped away from me before I understood what that meant. I knew then that I couldn't keep going down this path because it was causing me irreversible destruction. And for a while, I couldn't even bring myself to call myself a woman. I couldn't understand who I was because I was so fundamentally confused over the years by this irresponsible guidance from these adults who were supposed to help me and my parents. But I pushed through in my detransition. And even though it wasn't easy, even though I had no guidance medically, psychologically from my doctors, even though I lost my support from the transgender community completely during this time, I managed to get through it. And my story wasn't just a tragedy. I could heal. I could be that happy, bubbly daughter that I used to be, in spite of everything that I had gone through. I've been speaking publicly about my experiences, transitioning and then detransitioning, since I was 17 years old. I'm now 20, and I've been all across the United States and abroad to tell my story, to give my testimony in various legislatures and communities, because this means everything to me. I want to use the pain that me and my parents and my family went through together to help save other families, to prevent history from repeating itself over and over again the way that it is now. But I haven't really gotten the chance to fight for my own state. And I love California. I believe that we are better than this.
Right.
California is our home. It's my heart. And I want to know that our children here will be safe too one day, and soon. That one day when I decide to have children of my own, that I won't have to possibly go through this with them again. Because this is not care. This causes harm irreversibly to anybody who partakes in it, but especially children. I want to dispel some of the myths around these treatments, particularly around puberty blockers. You may often hear that this is that puberty blockers are completely reversible, that they give the child just some time to think about whether they want to go through their natural puberty or try to attempt to simulate the puberty of the opposite sex. But what a ridiculous idea that we can stop a natural bodily process and not expect there to be any consequences.
Right.
Puberty is the only pathway through which a child can fully mature into an adult, physically, cognitively, psychologically, and of course, reproductively and sexually. If you stop a child's puberty for any amount of time, whether it be several months or a few years, which they often have children on these treatments for years up until their adulthood, you are costing them critical years off of their lives, off of their development, learning to integrate with their bodies and socialize with others around them. You're leaving them behind. You are not affording them the opportunity for anything but to be behind their peers. And the other treatments, the cross-sex hormones, the surgery, have left me, all these treatments actually have left me with irreversible changes. The puberty blockers have made it so that I have spinal and joint issues. The testosterone has made it so that I have permanent changes to my voice, my bone structure. I've experienced blood clots in the past, which has been terrifying to deal with. And I have lasting urinary tract and pelvic issues. With the surgery, I'm never going to be able to have the form or the function or the sensation back that could have been there. Not even a reconstruction could take my breast back. And because of how invasive these surgeries are, most people cannot actually go through a reversal because there isn't enough tissue to do so. And you might be thinking, well, what's the harm in maybe allowing children to socially transition or to present themselves as the opposite sex through their name and by calling themselves by a different identity and pronouns? Even this is ridding a child of crucial social development during their youth. Now, as an adult woman, I feel like I'm playing catch-up socially with other women. Because during my adolescence, I wasn't given that time to learn how to socialize with and integrate with other women and the complexities of female socialization. Because I was literally being socialized as a young man. I still have flashbacks. Sometimes I have dreams. Sometimes I see myself in the mirror in my waking life as a young man. And I can't put into words how terrifying that is. To see something that isn't there anymore, haunting me for years to come. Now, these are not organic feelings. There is no such thing as being born in the wrong body, and to allow a child to believe that is incredibly harmful to them. What these children are experiencing, where these feelings really come from for these children, for these young people, is a place of deeper personal pain in their lives. If you look at the personal history of these children who identify as transgender or experience gender dysphoria, many of them have a complex personal history of abuse, of neglect, of sexual assault, of trauma, of comorbid psychiatric issues, of learning disabilities. It's clear that their hatred of their sex and of their bodies is not something that is innate. Because there is no such thing as a transgender child. But there are unique, beautiful children who may need more guidance than their peers. Now, this issue is incredibly widespread. California is one of the states that is pushing hard in favor of this issue, ripping away children from their loving parents just because they told them that they love them and that they are beautiful as they are. There are even teachers going behind the backs of parents, telling their children that they can be the opposite sex, that the way that they are born is in fact wrong, and that they should change without the guidance of their parents who understand them best. But no adult has any more jurisdiction and responsibility over their children than their parents.
That's right. That's right.
And yet California is completely ignoring the rights of our parents to saying no, to being informed about their children and what they're going through, and the true nature of what transitioning will actually do to a child. Donald Trump has signed several executive orders. One, to protect women's spaces and sports, and our daughters from having their sports invaded by biological men. He also signed an executive order targeting publicly funded institutions that perform these treatments in children, which has been struck down by the Supreme Court and has been ignored by our state's legislature. An executive order is not enough.
That's right. That's right.
We need laws, not only federally, but in our state. Because as it is right now, this issue is being left state by state, which may benefit some states that are already going in the direction of protecting children, but California is going far deep, even deeper into the opposite direction, ripping our children from us and taking away their livelihoods for decades. We need to protect our children starting now.
That's right.
Yes. Come on, Mary, don't stop.
We all are concerned about the safety and the innocence of our children. So we need to act now.
That's right.
To every legislator here in California, I urge you to support these measures. Thank you.
Woo, thank you, Chloe.